I'm here today in the wonderful city of Bristol in the southwest of England. This is one of the largest cities in the whole of the UK, home to around 500,000 people. It's the home of Blackbeard, Banksy and the wonderful television show Skins. However, the city's history unto itself is incredibly fascinating. Bristol is first and foremost a port town, and in its past, at its prime, it was the second most important port in the entire UK. All this trading and the many merchants going up and down the ports of this city made many people extremely wealthy, and the city thrived and expanded into what it is today. However, it's through all this trading and these merchants where some of the city's darker past comes to light. And this has led to the city of Bristol having a pretty complicated relationship with one name in particular. And in recent years, that relationship came to a breaking point. I'm of course talking about the name Colston. Colston was the surname of one Edward Colston. Now, Edward was a Bristol boy born and bred. Being born in the city in 1636, he was even the Tory MP of the city from 1710 to 1713. However, before he was an MP, he was one of Bristol's many merchants. Colston traded up and down the ports of Bristol and made himself a very wealthy man in turn. However, he didn't just sit on his wealth. He invested a lot of his money back into the city. He was a patron of many of the city's establishments and donated a huge amount of money to many of the city's charities. And when he died in 1721, he left £71,000 to charities amongst the city. Now, £71,000 is an awful lot of money today, and it would have been an awful lot more money back then. Suffice to say, he was a bit of a local hero in the city, and when he died, his legacy was celebrated through his name. Countless places across the city of Bristol were named after him. Schools, streets, buildings. There was even a Colston bun that supposedly he invented the recipe for. You couldn't walk a mile without seeing his name somewhere in the city. These days, however, it's a little bit more difficult to find the name Colston anywhere in the city of Bristol, and that's because it's come more to light as to how exactly he made his money. As I mentioned, Colston was a merchant, and the issue really comes from what exactly he was trading. Colston was heavily involved in the North Atlantic slave trade. He would have shipped thousands of native Africans from their homeland on the continent over to the New World, America, to be sold into slavery. Of course, this is a fact many people already knew about Colston, and many have been saying for the longest time they wanted his name and image removed from the city. But by and large, these demands were ignored and swept under the rug. That all changed, however, in 2020, in the wake of the death of George Floyd. Now, George Floyd was a 46-year-old black man living in Minneapolis in the USA, and on the 25th of May 2020, a convenience store clerk called up the police in the city to let them know that someone had just used a fake $20 bill in their shop. This was, of course, George Floyd. When the police arrived on the scene, they acted with immense brutality, culminating in one of them, one Derek Chauvin, kneeling on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes. This suffocated him, and of course, he died. This death was incredibly brutal and seemed incredibly unjust just for using a fake $20 bill, and George Floyd's death sent shockwaves all across the globe. Protests happened everywhere, and here in the UK was no exception. What happened in Bristol is very much seen as the epicenter of the Black Lives Matter protests here in the UK. More people became aware of Colston's actions and what he had done, and more people wanted change to happen. They wanted his image and his name gone from the city. And this all came to a head with what is behind me right now. Once upon a time stood a statue of Colston himself on this plinth. On the 7th of June 2020, angry protesters pulled it down, graffitied all over it and stomped on it. Bristol had had enough. They wanted Colston out of their city due to his involvement with the North Atlantic slave trade. And one by one, places named after Colston stopped using his name. Let's go take a look at some. So behind me right now is the Bristol Beacon. This is a concert hall. All kinds of bands have performed here, big and small. Initially, however, this place was called Colston Hall, and actually there had been quite a bit of debate about changing its name even before 2020. The band Massive Attack, who are Bristol based, they said they wouldn't actually perform here unless the name was changed. And in 2017, Bristol Beacon / Colston Hall announced that they were changing that name. However, of course, the demand to change that name grew immensely in the wake of 2020, and finally it was renamed the Bristol Beacon. What's most interesting is that if you look at that initial entryway, you can still just about see the original signage saying Colston Hall. So behind me right now is Beacon Tower, and this was of course formerly called Colston Tower. This is just a standard run-of-the-mill office block, but what's most interesting about this one is it had the huge word Colston right on the top of it. And it was here that the name was most visually prominent. This was a huge part of the city skyline, the name Colston piercing right through all. And suffice to say, when the Black Lives Matter protest started kicking off here, that name went pretty quickly. In fact, it was just 4 days after the toppling of the statue that that name disappeared from the top of the building. Now, this pub is called the Open Arms, but if you hadn't guessed by now, it didn't always have that name. Initially, this pub was called the Colston Arms, and like many other things as we've established across the city, it changed its name during the Black Lives Matter protest to the Open Arms. However, it didn't change to that name overnight. They actually had a temporary name for a time being, which I'm sure you can see already. For a time, this pub was called Pubby McDrunkface, in ode of Boaty McBoatface. What a terrific name. It's a shame they didn't keep it, but Open Arms is very nice in its own special way too. So behind me right now is some student accommodation called Accommodation at 33. Originally, however, this was of course called Colston Street Accommodation. Just as we walked over, we actually noticed you can still see Colston Street written here. They've just like taped over it almost, it seems, but this really is some changing happening at the moment. This is history in the making. And while this place has changed its name, there are still places called Colston amongst the city. One of them being the street we're on. This is still called Colston Street. So we've actually been able to find one Colston Street sign. However, it's hidden behind a bin and it's been incredibly scratched at, which feels incredibly fitting, I must say. And another great example is Colston's School. Now, there were lots of schools named after Colston, but more or less all of them have changed their name now. All except this one called Colston's School. This is a private independent school that Colston himself started back in the day. And they've actually said that they are planning to change the name, but no name change has actually happened yet. But all this starts to get you wondering, what actually happened to that statue? The statue was dragged from its podium in the heart of the city to this point. And at this point, it was thrown into the river itself.
That coming down today, hopefully we've sent a message not just to everyone in the UK or the USA, worldwide.
There it lay for quite a few days, I believe. It was, however, eventually salvaged by the M Shed, a local museum here in Bristol. And for a while, it was put on display in the M Shed. Eventually, however, it was taken just into their storage unit. But what's really exciting is they've actually granted us permission to go into their warehouse to go view the statue for ourselves. Gosh, and here it is, the statue of Colston itself. Gosh, it's so shocking seeing it like this. For so long, this was like the pride of Bristol, like held in display in pride upright. To see it not only sabotaged, not only graffiti, but on its side as well. As you can see from this angle, his cane is missing and so is part of his coattail. I guess some lucky resident of Bristol has that tucked away in their home somewhere. I just want to highlight some of the stuff written on him. So I'm having a little quick look. I think there's a Black Lives Matter thing on his leg, but my personal favorite is how my name is written on his side here, just without the A and the T. It's very powerful to see it like this, and there's all kinds of debates about what's going to happen with the statue going forward. The general consensus seems to be that the Bristol people do want to see it on display in a museum in Bristol, and hopefully that will be here in the M Shed. And it just gets you thinking about not just Bristol's past, but the country's past as a whole. There are so many figures with dark histories that are celebrated with pride all across the UK. For example, I'm from Plymouth, And the name Francis Drake is all around the city. There's statues of him. The name of our main shopping centre is called Drake Circus. But if you look into his history, he's got some skeletons in there too. And it just makes you wonder, is his name going to disappear? Is statues of him going to be toppled down? All over the country, there's so many different things going on. But just seeing this statue here, it's been eye-opening. Thank you so much to the M Shed for letting us view the statue like this. It's been really amazing to finally, not only for myself to see it, but to show it to you guys as well, behind the camera seeing it as well. And it just gets you thinking about, why wasn't his name removed from the city sooner? Why did it take the death of a black man over in America to justify this happening? It just gets you thinking about that. Would it still be up if that never happened? What kind of other things are going to happen in the future? It just really makes you think about an awful lot about our world. Anyway, I think we're gonna leave Colston here for now. Let's get out of here. That just about wraps up our day in Bristol, but the history is carrying on. Things are still happening in this city. Places are still changing. Colston's name, day by day, is becoming more removed from this city. And the Black Lives Matter protest and that movement is still happening across the globe and here in Bristol. In fact, in the Bristol Museum and Art Gallery, there's a terrific mural done by artist Jasmine Thompson. It's called "A Movement, Not a Moment," and it highlights so much about the Black Lives Matter movement. It's absolutely incredible. Go check it out if you're in the city. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. If you hadn't realized, this is a very different kind of video to what I normally produce. Please do like, comment, share, subscribe, all that sort of stuff to get this video out there. I really do genuinely hope you enjoyed it. And if you really did enjoy it and want to see more videos like this one, then please do consider supporting on Patreon. Suffice to say, doing videos like this costs a little bit more than my normal fare. So if you can support and want to support, that would be incredible. Okay guys, take care.